Time after time, we finally got some money. But I'm talking about the history of money. What is money and where did it come from? Thousands of years ago, before there was any civilization, if you had some wheat, you would take it and go to the bazaar, and you would trade it with someone that had milk. There is no money involved, but it's kinda like money. Another way you could get stuff was working. Like for example, you wanted a few kilos of wheat. You would plow some land and get some wheat in return. The first villages were the first people that actually did trades like this. Like someone had some eggs, they would trade it for some bread. The people of the villages knew each other and they trusted each other. The bigger civilizations got, the bigger trades got, and it got more complicated, and that made it become harder and harder. And that's when humans discover precious metal, rare metals that actually had some value, like gold and silver. The first type of currency that humans created was about 5,000 years ago, which was in a place called Lydia, and that's in Western Anatolia, and it's also a place that Cyrus the Great takes over. Before a government came behind a sort of money, there was no money. The Lydian government created this currency and named it the shekel. Right now, this currency is referred to as the Mesopotamian shekel. And as you know, Mesopotamia is the area around the two rivers that flow through modern-day Iraq. When they created the first currency and people trusted it, the first scammers were born. They realized that a little bit of metal has some value, and they decided to create fake coins. They would use tin and create fake coins, and tin was the cheapest metal you could find. It was very easy to scam back then because people didn't have knowledge of fake currency. But when time passes, they realize how to spot a fake gold or silver coin from a mile away, and that type of scamming was no more. This is when we get to 546 BC, when Cyrus the Great adds Lydia to the Persian Empire, and he sees that shekel is a form of currency over there. He takes the idea and creates the Daric currency, which was the Achaemenid form of money. A coin that was 96% gold, and it was the strongest money at that time. The reason this currency was so strong back then, it was because it had the Achaemenid Empire behind it. It's also good to know that they were very against fakes, and that was why this money was very powerful. Throughout history, these gold coins came and went, and that's until we get to 618. When the Tang Dynasty is in charge of China, they create the first banknote. The reason they started this is when the empire owed money to the people, instead of giving gold and silver coins to the people, they would give certificates for it. They would write that this paper is worth this much in gold, and they would put the stamp of the empire on it, so it was very official. And that stamp made people actually trust it in the value. And it was backed by something, and that was the government's gold. The idea was so good that it went to India, Iran, and Europe, and they printed currencies, and it was backed by gold or silver. This was only the case in civilizations. There were places that they didn't have coins or banknotes, and they were living like the old days. Like in one of the Micronesian islands called Yap, until a few hundred years ago, their money was a form of rock that they carved. They would cut these rocks, and the bigger they were, the more value they had. And this is in a time where civilizations are using banknotes and coins. In this time, Governments that didn't know what they were doing, they would print too much money and basically cause inflation and lose its value. And it was around 500 years ago, the first economists were born. People that would tell governments to not print money like that, and it should be backed by something so it retain its value. You guys have heard that the Spanish Empire basically ruined South America and steals everything. And by everything, we mean all the valuables like gold and silver. A lot of gold and silver enter Spain, so Spain should be a superpower then, right? But the opposite happened. So much gold and silver entered the Spanish market that it damn near becomes worthless. Gold and silver got cheap, but everything else got very expensive. And sometimes you had to pay a lot of gold or silver for even a piece of bread. There were some people that benefited off of this, people that owed a lot of gold and silver to the government, and they could pay them off very easily after this. But the rest of the people couldn't even buy a loaf of bread. This was one of the biggest inflations in history. How did money become worldwide? This was done by the British. As you know, the colonies were part of Britain, and the British government would put pressure on these people to pay them taxes in British pounds. The pressure they put on the Americans causes them to pick up their guns and start the Revolutionary War. This causes the American Revolution to be successful, and the US finally became an independent nation. And after all that, the US dollar was born. When the US dollar was created, it never went down, and it grew day by day. And in a short period of time, it became the most powerful currency in the world. And that's in a way where the British would put pressure to pay in British pounds. Now the British are keeping dollars in their vaults because it's valuable. We get to the 19th centuries, where banks become a thing worldwide, and they started to grow. They would take other people's money and give loans out and charge a percent, but a lot of times they would hit a dead end. A lot of people would get together and want their money back in one time, but there was no money to give back because you loaned them all out, and that was why banks would go bankrupt. You might not believe it, but this style of banking is still here today. And 2008 was the last one that got caught. A person by the name of Bernie Madoff, which we made a video on about the Ponzi scheme he created. If you like stories like this, you should definitely watch it. But let's see the power of money and find out what money is powerful. You should know that up until 1973, the US dollar was backed by gold. But after that, there's nothing that backs up the US dollar. After they removed the gold standard of the US dollar, a lot of economists said that the US dollar should be worthless after this. If it's backed by nothing, it means nothing. But it seems like they were wrong, and the US dollar never lost the value it has. The power of the US dollar depends on all the governments in the world, and that's because in most central banks in the world, they have US dollar. And that's exactly the reason that the US dollar is very valuable and it stays valuable. You could say the trust they put in this currency keeps this currency alive. Governments around the world are basically gambling. They keep billions of dollars in their vault, and if they have euros or pounds, they trade it for more US dollar. And they bet themselves that the US dollar has more value, so we're gonna keep that one. But some people are pessimists, and they believe the US dollar is gonna crash. But it seems like it's not happening anytime soon, because it's still up there. We got to a point where 98% of transactions are done with digital currency. So you don't need cash or coins anymore, because only 2% of transactions are done with cash. Cryptocurrencies are the newest thing that have been added to the world. We finally got to the present. None of us have any cash in our wallet. We just have a piece of plastic that works a lot of the times. If they block the card and there's no internet, the money is no good anymore. Everything we have is in a digital world. crypto, money, stocks. If there's no electricity or internet, I don't know what to do. But let's see what the future of this holds.